Check 1, 2, 3. Welcome into Behind the Line. I am Parker Terrell.
And I'm Alex Dusky.
And we are here on the beautiful campus of Oklahoma State University here in Stillwater, Oklahoma, talking about OSU sports, talking about all kinds of stuff around the country. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing great, especially since now the Big Ten has announced that they will be playing football. It's something that we've been talking about these last couple of weeks, and it's finally, there's been rumors circulating, but the news hit at 8 a.m. Central Time that they have decided to play this season.
Absolutely. So, as we all know, couple months ago, Big 12, SEC, ACC, they decided to play football.
Yes.
Amidst this coronavirus pandemic. The Big 10 and Pac-12 decided to cancel, but there have been rumors circulating and also a ton of pressure from Big 10. You've been saying this for a couple weeks, Alex, that the parents of the players have been pushing administration hard to get this season back, and lo and behold, here we are.
It worked.
Big 10 has decided to play football. So they announced today that they are going to start playing October 24th, the Big Ten, and they're going to play 8 games in 8 weeks.
And the thing about that is that it does not leave any room for, COVID, like with Tulsa and Oklahoma State, we just had to postpone our game because of that. Yeah. So they don't have any wiggle room. So that's also another reason that they're not expecting fans to be at these games. So try and keep all the cases down as much as possible.
To me, the reason that they are playing so far away from now, more than a month away, is because they're going to get these the corona protocols in place before that time. So because they have longer than a month, they're going to be able to perhaps play some scrimmages, some inter-squad scrimmages, and they'll take advantage of this rapid COVID testing that the Big 12 has also
they started implementing this week.
So that will help a good deal in determining contact tracing and all that kind of stuff to do with the different protocols. So I'm excited, Alex. I think that they can pull this off. I think the Big Ten it's great that we're going to have a real college football season now. No offense to the Pac-12, but I just think that they probably weren't going to have a team that was going to compete for that college football playoff, one of those 4 spots.
Right.
I think now with the SEC playing, with the ACC playing, and with the Big 12 and Big 10, we're going to have a real college football playoff and perhaps somewhat of a real bowl season, which is extremely exciting considering where we were back in March and April.
Yeah, I think the thing that also you were talking about with not starting until October 24th is that these teams have not been practicing as much as OSU and the other Big 12 teams were practicing in June and July, and so now that gives them that time to practice with those COVID-19 precautions. Something, Nebraska, Iowa, and Ohio State were the 3 commissioners that voted to play back in August when the league decided to postpone. And so those 3 teams and the parents and players from those colleges have been the ones that have been very vocal. But then Jim Harbaugh from Michigan has also been pretty vocal. And a quote that he said was, he's super excited about this. And he said to stay positive and test negative. And I thought that was just kind of a fun thing for him to thinking about that. Most of the precautions that they're taking are similar to what we've been doing, but something that I wasn't aware that OSU is doing, so I'm pretty sure Big 12 has not implemented this, is that if a football player tests positive, they will be out for a full 21 days at the minimum, because they are going to do the EKG cardio testing, because what some people are figuring out is that COVID-19 is affecting student athletes' hearts. So what do you think about that, the whole 21 days being out of practice?
I understand. I understand why they've been not practicing, because frankly a lot of teams like Michigan State, Rutgers, they didn't believe that they were going to play. So if one school's practicing, the other schools don't need to be practicing. So I totally understand and why they need to start this season later, because they haven't had that the practice time needed. A lot of people were saying, why can't they just start up practice right now and play some games coming up? There's no way that that's even possible. So, but again, Alex, I am excited.
I am too, and it is, no one's really been speculating about the Pac-12 at all these last couple months, but the universities in California and Oregon do not have approval from the public health officials to start contact practice at all. So I personally don't think that the Pac-12 will change their minds. You know, they've been pretty quiet since late July when they made a decision. So, like you said, it'll probably just be the 4 of the Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, and California, as you were saying, in Oregon, their laws for coronavirus are a lot stricter, and it's going to be a huge hurdle for those teams to be able to come back in the Pac-12. But we're excited that the Big Ten is playing. When we come back, we're going to talk about a tough weekend for the Big 12 last week in football and a look ahead to this week's games. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Will Joyce, the Mayor of Stillwater. As Mayor, it's my responsibility to help develop plans for a variety of resident needs, including roads, emergency services, and utilities. Some of those services are paid for with federal money that the government distributes to states and communities based on Census Bureau data. This is your tax money coming back to our community, but if you or your household aren't counted, we lose nearly $1,200 per person to places like Texas, Kansas, and Arkansas. So help bring that money back to local communities by filling out the 2020 census. This year, it's easy to do. You'll receive a postcard in March 2020 with a unique code for your address. Using that code, simply go online, call, or request a paper copy of the census and fill it out. I want to make sure that you and your whole household are counted in the 2020 census. It's important not just to Stillwater, but to all of Payne County.
And to Behind the Line, welcome back, I should say, to Behind the Line. I'm Parker Terrell here with Alex Dusky, and we are going to talk about some college football, specifically the Big 12. Alex, last week was a tough week, to say the least, for the Big 12.
It was. 2 teams that did not have any issues at all were OU and Texas. Something to note is that both quarterbacks had outstanding games, which were expected. You know, OU played Missouri State, and Texas played who did they play?
They played UTEP.
UTEP. So both, you know, the expected wins there. You know, something to look out for is that OU does have a redshirt freshman quarterback with Spencer Rattler. Mm-hmm. So some new faces over there. Familiar face with Texas 4-year starter Sam Ehlinger. Do you have any takeaways from that game? I know that they were pretty easy opponents. Yeah.
So as you said, the teams that really rolled at the top of the conference were OU and Texas. OU winning 48-0 and Texas winning 59-3 over UTEP. And I mean, it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of what you expected. I mean, Spencer Rattler was 14 of 17, 290 yards and 4 touchdowns, and really only 3 quarters, if that, of play. I mean, OU had a lot of problems with coronavirus. They had a lot of guys out for this game. They were petitioning to get that game perhaps moved to this week, as OSU and Tulsa did, but they didn't end up doing that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's a lot of the same, Alex. A lot of pundits picked OU to win the conference, as they have for many years, yeah. And Texas to finish second to them. And these results, I mean, don't change my mind in terms of the hierarchy of the Big 12, who's good and who's not. Oklahoma, even though they lost CeeDee Lamb, they lost Jalen Hurts, they lost Kennedy Brooks, they're still an excellent team, yeah. Especially on the offensive side of the ball.
A team that did win, but just barely, is Texas Tech. You know, they won at home against Houston Baptist, but only by 2. What do you think that says about Texas Tech? You know, people were predicting them to be like not top like OU Texas, but still give Oklahoma State a run for their money this season.
I mean, Houston Baptist had already lost a game, I believe, to North Texas, so maybe they got beat by North Texas last season. I don't have that up with me right now, but I do know that was their second loss of the season because they played on week 1. It's pretty embarrassing, honestly. Houston Baptist is not a good football team at all, and Texas Tech was rolling in this game, and then they just decided to give up a bunch of points in the second half to this Houston Baptist team. I'm not going to make a lot. I'm not going to overreact to this.
Early in the season, for sure.
There's some games that we're coming up to that I don't believe are overreactions, but with this game with Texas Tech, I just think that they lost their focus in the second half. I don't think that they're a great team, but I do think that it might be a little of an overreaction to say that Texas Tech is just going to be, like go 1-8 this upcoming season.
But what about that Iowa State loss to the University of Louisiana, and that was Louisiana's first win against a ranked opponent on the road. And Iowa State was still a good team this year too. So
it honestly wasn't even just like they just had an amazing game and it was like a nail biter to the end. Louisiana destroyed Iowa State on Saturday. The final score was 31-14. It could have been higher than that.
Yeah.
So much disappointment from the Iowa State side. And I know that they tend to start slow every single year, and then all of a sudden they're beating OU in middle October or OSU, but this is just embarrassing. This is embarrassing for the Cyclones. This is embarrassing for Matt Campbell. It's obvious that they weren't ready for this game. Now, I will credit Louisiana. They're a good team. They're predicted to finish first in their conference. They have a lot of returning guys. But I still think that Iowa State had a lot more talent. They were ranked 23rd coming into this game. Brock Purdy, who's supposed to be this big-time quarterback, perhaps an NFL first-round draft pick, did not show up at all in this game. I'm going to go to the box score here for this game. And, Purdy was 16 of 35, 145 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception with a quarterback rating of 26.6 out of 100. That is bad.
Yeah,
that is really, really bad against a smaller school, a group of 5 school.
Yes.
So I don't know what to say. If you're an Iowa State fan right now and you're watching this, I'm really sorry, and I don't know how your season is really going to end up. When we come back, we're going to talk about some OSU players in the National Football League that had a really tough first week, and one of them that did not. Be sure to stick with us here on Behind the Line. And we are back. Alex, We just talked about the Big 12, how they had a tough weekend last week in college football. Let's shift to the professional league. There's some former Oklahoma State football players that had a really tough first week of the NFL season. Let's start off with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Tight end Blake Jarwin had an ACL injury.
Yes, and they have not fully released like if it's a complete tear, partial tear, just that he has suffered an ACL injury and that he will be requiring surgery for that. It's unsure if he's expected to be out the entire season, but that's what people are speculating, is that it will be the whole season, which is tough for the Cowboys. That's their starting tight end, so they're going to be scrambling for that. And then another Oklahoma State player that suffered a for sure season-ending injury is Packers guard Lane Taylor. He had his second season-ending injury in 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Last year was like a bicep tear, I think it was, and then this year he has suffered a knee injury that will require surgery and will be out for the season.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough first week for both of those guys, especially Lane Taylor, as you said. He's a guy that has a lot of promise there on that interior offensive line for the Packers, blocking for Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and it's just kind of heartbreaking to see him go down for a second season in a row. Especially
because last season that injury happened in the second game of the season, and now this year it was in the first game of the season. So he's just had two, basically no season 2 years in a row. Yeah,
that's really tough. Hopefully next season he can come back healthy for the Packers and get a full season, or at least a part of a season in. But going back to Blake Jarwin, that's a really big loss for the Cowboys because they got rid of Jason Witten, who they brought back out of retirement last season to play tight end for them. And Blake Jarwin just seemed like he was being suppressed by them basically forcing the ball to Jason Witten. Well, now Jason Witten's gone. He's with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be weird all season saying. But it just stinks for Blake Jarwin, and it stinks for all Cowboys fans because he was a guy that they were really excited about. They gave a a new contract in the offseason to be their guy, their starting tight end, and for him to go down with that ACL injury, which is always nasty. I mean, it's really tough.
It is for sure, and I saw today like a fantasy article is like how to replace Blake Jarwin in your fantasy team.
Yeah.
So even those that aren't Cowboys fans are upset about losing him for the season.
Not all bad news though for
Correct.
Former Cowboys. Former Biletnikoff Award winner James Washington, receiver at Oklahoma State, had a great game on Monday Night Football for the Steelers.
Yes, the Steelers were playing the New York Giants at their stadium in New Jersey. The final was 26-16. So I will say the Steelers kind of the Giants gave the Steelers a little bit of issue early on, but as you can see, these are some highlights of James Washington with his receptions.
Here's
and
his touchdown right here.
Yeah. As you can see, that was just like, it was a really athletic move of him hurdling the guy to get into that end zone, just really fighting for it.
Yeah, a lot of guys would have probably gone down there at the 2 or 3 yard line, but he decided he was going to push through. And that's something that, as you can see, his teammates celebrating with him.
Yeah.
They love to see that fight. They love to see that grit to not give up on the play and to get in for 6 there. I'm excited. James Washington had a really tough year last year. A lot of people expected him to be kind of that second receiver for the Steelers after Juju Smith-Schuster, and he did not step up at all. So I am excited to see them feeding him the ball early. With their returning quarterback who was out all last season in Big Ben Roethlisberger.
Yes, and then also with the Steelers is quarterback Mason Rudolph. With Ben being healthy, it's probably unlikely that Rudolph will get much playing time, but do you anticipate him, if the Steelers are ever like really far ahead, that they'll put him in, or in case of an injury, where do you think he stands in that lineup?
I don't know. They brought back Josh Dobbs to be another quarterback in that room.
Tennessee.
Last season, Mason didn't have a great year, of course. The infamous Myles Garrett helmet incident comes to mind, but apart from that, I mean, he didn't have a good year at all, and he's going to have to really earn his teammates' trust back if he wants to see the field. All right, we're going to commercial, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Oklahoma State's home game against the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. We're going to give some over-unders and some players to watch. Stay right here on Behind the Line. Hello and welcome back to Behind the Line. Parker Terrell here with Alex Dusky. In our final segment, we're going to talk about the upcoming game, Oklahoma State versus Tulsa. Alex, our OSU insider, who are some players to watch?
All right, so on offense, I have L.D. Brown. He is the second string running back behind Chuba Hubbard, but arguably might be the fastest player on the team. His best game was against Baylor last season. He had 4 carries, 79 yards, and 1 touchdown. He had a 68 yard long run against that game, and then him against Tulsa last season, he had 5 carries for 22 yards, no touchdowns, but he's definitely someone to watch on the offensive side of the ball. And then for defense, for sure, Christian Holmes. He is the grad transfer from Mizzou. I've talked about him before on this show. He's at cornerback, and in interviews, Coach Gundy loves him. He has nothing but high praise to say for him, and so everyone is really excited to have him back, or have him on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, here's some highlights of Christian Holmes that you were talking about. I mean, I'm excited for him as well, coming from the SEC, where, I mean, we all know how good of players they are, how good of receivers that he's going up against, and I just think he brings that ball hawk mentality that the Oklahoma State defense has kind of lacked a little bit in the past years, and hopefully he can step up and be that number 1 cornerback alongside Rodarius Williams.
Yes.
So for me, Alex, some players to watch. Another grad transfer is Tay Martin at receiver. He comes from Washington State. Not a lot of people are talking about like how big of a deal it was that he decided to transfer here. Of course, he decided to transfer amidst the coronavirus pandemic when he learned that the Pac-12 wasn't going to play. But he has started 26, not including bowl games, 26 games in a row. For the Washington State Cougars. He started every game as a sophomore and as a junior. Last season as a junior, he caught 43 passes for 564 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had some injuries, so he only started 7 games, but he was a starter for every game his sophomore year.
This week in media availability, Coach Gundy has been talking about him a lot and has said that we should expect Tay Martin to get an extensive number of snaps this Saturday. So kind of predicted before Gundy had it out. And Tylan Wallace, a receiver, said that he spoke highly of Tay Martin as well, saying that he's just a really good ball player, and we should all expect to see a lot from him. Yeah, so they kind of play the same position, Wallace and Tay Martin, that outside receiver. So I would think that Martin is going to give Wallace some reps, because remember, Tylan Wallace hasn't played a football game in a long time, since October of last year, early October of last year. So he's going to need some breathers. He's going to need probably on reduced snaps for this game. He recently had to, in practice, they wear the green jersey for no contact. So it's like, this is a recent change. He said yesterday, but like the brace is off. He feels good, back how he felt last year, and he's ready to play. So we should also expect some from him. Yeah,
another guy for me to watch is Colby Harvell-Peel in the secondary. He's going to be the leader of that secondary. Last year, he was arguably the best safety in the Big 12, and I'm looking for him to really step up and lead that super talented secondary, including Christian Holmes you talked about. All right, we're going to go to some over-under. Okay, so the first topic is, so I'm going to give you a number, and I'm going to ask you think it's going to go over or under. First thing, quarterback for Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders, 200 passing yards, over, under.
I'm going to have to say under. I will give Spencer all the credit. He's worked really hard this season with Coach Rattay, just like being more comfortable with being the quarterback, but that's a lot of yards for the first game of the season after this long period of not playing. So I'm gonna have to go with under on that one. Okay.
To me, I'm gonna pick the over. Okay. I think Tulsa, as we talked about last week in our preview show, Tulsa is really rebuilding their defense, especially that secondary, and I think that Sanders is going to want to show people how much work that he's put in the offseason under Coach Tim Rattay, and how much that he can really dictate a game with his arm, not his legs. I think Spencer Sanders is going to go over that number. Second over-under, Chuba Hubbard, 250 yards.
I'm going to have to go over just because last year against Tulsa, he had 256 rushing yards, so he already hit that mark. And, everyone's been talking about Chuba since last season, and he himself has said how excited he is just to be back out here, and his motivation to win as a team, not necessarily necessarily an individual. I think that the team's really pushing him to have a good game just to start off the season on the right foot. So I'm going to take the over.
To be contrarian, I'll say the under. But I do think that he's going to have a big game. But maybe he doesn't hit that number because they're going to keep him out quickly. Defense forcing 2 turnovers, over under.
I'm going to say over. You know, we've been talking about our defense is pretty strong, and Tulsa is kind of lacking in strength on their just in the offense. They're a pretty young team. So I have faith in our defense. We've been hyping ourselves up, and like we said, 10 out of 11 defensive starters returning, and now with the addition of Christian Holmes, we have a full really strong defense. I'm
going to take the over as well, or perhaps just a push. We forced 2 turnovers, but I think that the defense is experienced and is going to help win this game for the Cowboys quickly. Your prediction for the game, the score?
I'm going to say 42-3 Oklahoma State.
I'm going to say 48-10 Oklahoma State. Thank you so much for watching Behind the Line. We are every week Wednesday at 2:45 on Suddenlink Channel 112, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, and YouTube on the Ocali Media page. For Alex, I'm Parker. God bless, and see you next week.
Oh, there you go. Superstar.
The end of the practice is when we do all of our, intensity drills.
Okay.
She was going at it.
Stop. If we get them to Detroit by, let's say Monday the 15th. Time's right there. There we go. Yeah. Just, you can't.
Don't want to talk about it.
When you see the water tower, you're gonna make a right.
If we win this, is the one way to get to the playoffs.
I know.